Alright, today in this video we're going to be taking a look at Ara'Kara plus 11 on the Brewmaster Monk. Now I was running with some friends, so we were in comms for this one. Now Ara'Kara is definitely one of the easier keys out of the bunch. It's right up there with Mist of Cheer and a Scythe. It doesn't have too many challenging mechanics. Most of the mobs are pretty tame in terms of like their abilities. Group damage and tank damage are pretty like evenly dispersed, so healers don't need to worry too much. Tanks also don't need to be as careful with certain mechanics. And generally, I think the bosses are normally easier. The only hard boss I would say is maybe the last one. But in this video, we're going to be going over kind of everything that we did in terms of routing, both things that we did, I think, well, and things that we definitely messed up on, and just kind of nerd out over this key. So I hope you guys enjoy. What's really cool about this dungeon is that there is a lot of different options in terms of routing. The route that we're going to go, I think, is pretty good, though I definitely think we could pull more aggressive in the future. I've mostly been bugging this key this season, so it's always a toss-up like what DPS or healers are going to kick and which ones won't. We were in comms, like I said, but I still wanted to play it I'd rather play it safe than sorry. So what we're going to be doing is our first pull, we're going to be pulling in a lot of these like smaller mobs along with these larger crawlers, the engorged crawlers. They don't really do much outside of apply a poison to your group. Luckily, we have 4 poison dispels. Both me, the healer, our Augavoker, and our hunter can all remove poison, so we're pretty much chilling this whole entire run. But we're going to just be stopping at the bottom of the stairs. The other annoying part about being a tank in this dungeon is that the little crawlers constantly dash the tank, slowing them for a couple of seconds. And it's very, very obnoxious to keep moving with them. Anyways, when these guys start casting their little like AoE eruption thing, you just want to like keep moving on. If you stun them, they have to start their cast over. And once they finish their cast, they just die immediately anyways. So you just kind of want to let them do their thing. Now, there are 2 attendants in this next little platform area. These guys are probably the most annoying thing because they have 2 different schools of magic that they use. They have Resonant Barrage as well as Webbolt, which, like, one is Shadow and one is Physical or something like that. So what ends up happening is if you kick one, they just start casting the other, and then once you kick the next one, they're off of the lockout on their Webbolt cast. So it's a little difficult to group. That's why I didn't do a big pull with Lust at the start. A lot of groups tend to do that, but I find without a lot of coordination or without, like, coordinated kicks, you're just not going to be able to group them up efficiently. But we are going to try to get them on top of the mini-boss here, Ixen. This guy is probably the easiest of the 3 mini-bosses, though. You want to watch out for this Web Spray Frontal. The Horrifying Shrill is the only thing you need to kick. And then outside of that, it's very, very tame. You cast a couple of Web Bolts here and there, but that's not really a big deal. Pulling mobs onto him is definitely more efficient than just single targeting him down like we are doing here. So this is definitely something we're going to try to do better in future runs. Getting the casters on top of this mini boss would be key. Really assigning just one player to make sure you're casting the Shrill, the Fear, and then yeah, I mean it's really just like dodge swirls, don't stand in frontal, and you're pretty much chilling. In this run too, I am running a fairly defensive build. I was running like Stone Vaults a bunch before this, so I was running a very tanky build and I kind of forgot to swap. This is definitely a dungeon where a tank can lean into a little bit more of a DPS build because there just, again, isn't a whole lot of tank damage that's going on here. We're going to try to do a big pull here, and then once everything's stacked up, we have CDs coming up here. Our warrior just popped. We'll have Breath of Eons in a second, and then we also have True Shot Aura from our Marksman Hunter. So this pull is going to get obliterated. We decided to lust here instead of boss. We felt like we weren't going to need it for the boss. There is also the option to pull onto mini-boss as well, but the problem with mini-boss is there is a little bit of AoE damage on that mob, and pulling all the mobs that do this like Toxic Rupture onto a static boss, or a mini-boss in this case, is a little annoying. Here comes the Ring of Peace to keep the mobs away, and then we're going to go right into Nact. Nact is probably the scariest of the 3, and I say that mostly because he does this Call of the Brood, which does this kind of intense AoE damage. It does 3 ticks, so as long as you're topped by the 3rd tick or healthy enough for the 3rd tick, you should be good. I do end up eating the Toxic Rupture there because I didn't want to have to kite out of melee or drag it onto our warrior. And outside of that, as long as we're topped before each Call of the Brood, we should be good. It's going to be happening again here in about 5 seconds. So as long as we're healthy and our healer has a little bit of mana in the tank, we're going to be looking pretty good. Here comes Call of the Brood again. This also spawns adds, so you definitely want to be careful when they do come in, because if they jump at a range, they're going to be out of melee, and it's harder to get threat. And those melee attacks could be lethal if Call of the Brood isn't topped quickly. All right, now we're moving on to our 3rd platform. This will have probably, I don't know, like the 2nd easier mini-boss, I guess. It's weird because I think the first guy is harder only because of the trash around it, but this guy's pretty easy because there's not really anything around here. You just got to be really careful about the poisonous clouds he puts down, as well as the web spray frontal. The web spray frontal, though, like, again, isn't really too crazy to worry about, but there's that poison cloud that's coming out. You just don't want to be standing in that, so there ends up being a lot of, like, negative space that you can't really work with here if this mini boss takes too long, but you can always bait behind. You just want to be careful not to step on any eggs. And then we just eventually got this attendant in by using a series of knocks as well as kicks to basically knock him onto the guy so we can get some cleave. There's one more orb in the back there. We end up not being able to get it, so that's all right. And now this next pull is going to be... essentially what we're doing with this next pull is we're waiting for the boss RP to spawn, as well as doing almost all melee mobs. So there's nothing to really worry about or have to kick here. So we're grouping up the 3 large engorge crawlers, as well as all these tiny little ravenous crawlers. Now, our healer walked off the edge here and then released. So right now I'm playing a little game of I have to stay alive, an 11 fortified key as a I don't know, I don't think I'm undergeared, but Brewmasters definitely don't have a ton of self-healing, and I do want to save some defenses for the boss, so I end up just playing this like crazy kiting game. And now that our healer is coming back, I'm trying to kite to him, and basically we're trying to do our best to make sure we're keeping our team cleansed. So Nama got it, I'm cleansing him. Our evoker, QB, is doing a very good job at keeping people clean as well, and I think hunters can also remove poisons. I believe that's a new talent. I might be lying about that, but I thought a hunter told me that. We'll see. And then last but not least, we have these toxic ruptures. Again, we're just cutting them out. We don't want to be in them, and we don't want to drag them over our melee. I'm going to kind of roll back. Probably not the best thing to do, especially because our warrior didn't expect it. No one took damage there, but he did say, oh, when I did that. He was a little surprised. We definitely want to be top here. The big thing on Avanox, personally, I think the alert swirl does damage, but I think the Gossamer swirl is a little bit sketchier because it lasts for a longer period of time and it's accompanied by swirls on the floor, and there's a good way to counter that mechanic, and I'll talk about that in a second here. So, pulling the boss, you want to make sure that the boss is not near the eggs, and your DPS will want to swap to them right away. Having a full melee group is definitely not the best thing here. Luckily, we do have one melee, one range, and then we have an AUG who's buffing both of them. So they will be able to commit some cooldowns. I think our warrior committed cooldowns here to the ads, where our... actually, I think everyone used them on pull. Never mind. And now here's that onslaught. So melee want to try to be stacked if they can, and you all want to move in the same direction. We didn't do a great job at that here because of how long the ads took to kill. The only reason the ads took a long time to kill was because of the using cooldowns at the start of the pull. I noticed that the eggs are on the far side of the map, so now I'm pulling the boss to this corner. And as soon as that alert troll goes off and everyone's healthy, we are going to move over there. So our warrior just jumps in. He does want to be a little careful of fixates, but warriors are very, very tanky, so it shouldn't be that big of a deal. He didn't really have cooldowns for this set, but he will have cooldowns for the next. That crawler is dangerously close, but luckily the Gossamer Onslaught will prevent the boss from doing that cast. Me and our healer are a little bit stacked here, and we're going to try to bait these nice and clean. This wasn't the cleanest stack. Ideally, what we'll end up doing in the future is trying to pixel stack as a group. And now, unfortunately, the eggs have spawned right next to us. So I noticed that, and here comes the alert troll. Now, what's really cool is on the tank buster, the boss will actually leap at the tank if the tank isn't in range. So what I could do too is that voracious bite. I could have just like rolled out for it, and he would have leapt to me anyways. Big breath coming in, and our warrior just like deleted that group with his cooldowns. So really good heads up play by Nama. And then this Gossamer Onslaught, ideally, again, we would be stacked here, but we're not because people were kind of in range. So now we're just playing the kind of stay alive game. You're dodging your feet, and you're making sure that the healer is keeping you up. Now, once again, the egg spawned kind of close to us, so there you just saw the boss leap on that tank buster. I'm just trying to pull him as far enough away so we have enough room to kill the ads. And I think the idea is that we'll kill one more set, and then the last set we'll end up tunneling on. So our warrior is going to swap here in a second, and our hunter too, you can see him kind of in the back putting down a tar trap and just trying to nuke these as fast as possible. I do need to pay a little bit of attention as a tank. If they get too close, I want to pull the boss further away if I can, because of if he happens to gobble them up, he gains like a 50% damage increase for a little bit of time, which is not good. That'll kill your group or kill your tank. Now, unfortunately, our warrior went down. I think he got clipped by a swirl. It's not going to be that big of a deal. We're going to end up being able to get a res on him. The eggs are on the far side. I'm trying to position the pulse in such a way where we don't have to worry about them at all. But we do want to be careful of the ads nearby. You can see off to the left-hand side that there are like some crawlers and some little creatures of the dungeon that are kind of hiding out, and we don't want to pull them. Ads are coming in, 10% left. Binding shot goes down, so I'm waiting on the Ring of Peace. One crawler made it through, so I'm going to commit the ring here, just so the boss doesn't heal. And then once he does his Gossamer Onslaught, he will not gobble up any of the ads until this cast finishes. So you have about 5 seconds to finish it off. We're dodging our feet, and the boss goes down. A lot of the healing there for the group comes from the Gossamer Onslaught as well as the Shrill. So you definitely want to be, or alerting Shrill. You definitely want to be keeping an eye out for those as a healer. Now moving on, this next pull isn't too dangerous. A lot of the stuff is avoidable. There's a little bit of tank damage, so our healer should be able to grab some mana here. I don't remember if he does end up sitting down. Oh, he definitely is. He's far back. The extraction strikes, we want to be a little bit careful. We can dodge them, but if we happen not to dodge them, the mini bosses will, like, they leech for the damage that they deal, and it's a little bit of a big tank buster. We're going to group everything up onto the guard. Now, this isn't, like, part of me is thinking that this might not be the most efficient thing to do, and you just want to kill the trash first. But it also doesn't make sense that we had True Shot and our Warrior CDs up and then not pull the Blood Guard. So that's why I ended up doing the entire bridge there, because we had CDs. If we didn't have CDs, I think you just don't, and then you can kill the mobs faster. But then I don't really know what to pull after this. The only thing you're really looking out for here is the volley. I forgot what the actual full cast name is, but it comes from the web mages. You just want to make sure you kick it. If not, you just poison the spell. And like I said before, we have a ton of poison spells in this group, so I'm not like too worried about it. One assistant ended up hitting me with that extraction strike, so he is leeching, or he did leech for it. And here comes another set of extraction strikes. I was able to, actually I didn't dodge either of those there. And you can see like the little buff over their head. It is an enrage effect, so a monk could run a paralysis de-enrage. And something that you're probably going to notice is that we're going right instead of left. Most groups, I think, opt to go left. The problem with going left is there's a lot more kicks, and things can go much more wrong because there's more of the alarm shrills that could possibly go off. And if you're not good about CCs, I find that like there's more kicks and more alarm shrills. So if you're not confident in your group's ability to keep those things under control, if you go right, there's a little bit more DR from the Blood Guards, but the pulls are a little bit more condensed, and I think the route ends up being a little bit cleaner. It's easier to group things up. It's easier. You have like less kicks to really worry about. And yes, they're taking a little bit less damage, but I don't think it's the end of the world because things will just be under control. The things that are deadly to your group. Outside of that, we're just rotating our defensives as best we can. The only thing that we're really looking out for here as a tank are those extraction strikes. When you see multiple of them going off, that's when you want to pop a defensive. I don't really have anything here, but I see that our healer's a little low on mana. So I'm giving him a couple seconds here to drink potentially, and I'm going to give myself a little bit of time for my cooldowns to regen. And on top of that, we see that the far guard is actually now patrolling away, so we can now take advantage of not having that 50% DR on, or 30% DR on these. I forgot if it's 50 or 30. Let's just assume it's 50, and if it's 30, that's fine. We can kill these sentry stag shells who are casting the alert shrill, because if that goes off, it pulls everything within 50 yards and it summons one of these other the blood guards. And if you have another blood guard in the pull, it makes everything so much more difficult to actually handle. One other thing I do want to mention is I believe I've heard rumors, and this would actually kind of lines up with my experience too. Keg Smash, I think, is bugged in terms of its threat generation. I don't think it's generating threat of a tank. It's just generating threat based off of its damage, which kind of sucks because it's making sometimes getting, getting threat sometimes a little annoying on pull. Even if we go into like a Keg Smash, Breath of Fire, Keg Smash into like a spinning crane kick, even with Exploding Keg, there's still times I'm losing threat. So you definitely want to be careful. If you are playing with a Brewmaster, give them a second or two just to get threat. That's normally not the problem because we deal a lot of damage, but Keg Smash being the majority of our damage is bugged. Kind of got really low there. You can see here that I am often vivifying my group. That is something that's really cool about the Brewmaster in this current season is Vivify is a large portion of our healing, especially if you're optimizing it well with the Vivacious Vivification buff that you're getting from your talent tree. It's very nice to heal yourself when you don't have high stacks of like Ox Orbs into Expel Harm, or you're down on a Celestial Brew, but it's also super nice for healing your group if someone needs some spot healing. If your healer ever doesn't have that global to get the entire group topped, or it's right before a damage instance where you need everyone to be healthy, you can throw a Vivify into one of your allies and it might allow them to live. And I feel like I've saved some keys using Vivify, especially in things like City of Threads. That pull isn't too difficult. Just basically you have to kill both alarm trills, and keeping them CC'd at the same time is very easy for a group like this. We have a ton of AoE CC through like Ring of Peace, Leg Sweep, Shockwave, knockbacks from both our Hunter and our AUG. We have Eruption. There's just a lot to be able to control those mobs, so we were pretty much chilling this entire run. This pull is nothing scary at all. A little bit of AoE damage from the Blood Worker as well as the Blood Guard. The Blood Worker does random charges at your allies. Just want to make sure you're healthy, especially before the Blood Guard does his giant stomp. But outside of that, this is a tame pull, and it's really a recovery pull before you go into boss. So you can see here, our Hunter is getting his cooldown recovery on his True Shot. Now we have all of our cooldowns plus Lust going into a Noob Zaket. And once this mob dies, we're going to be able to go in. I am going to let our healer drink just a little bit here. We definitely want our healer to be healthy, and in terms of his mana pool. And with 14 minutes left, and pretty much a double Lust from like on this boss than we'll be able to get on the last boss, we're not too worried about our time right now. So letting him drink for a couple seconds is only going to increase our success rate instead of risking it. Now this boss is pretty unique for a tank. The Impale always goes at you, so the frontal, you have a lot of control over where you can aim it. You want to dodge these tornadoes. I don't think they fixate players at all. They kind of just like wander around in certain directions, so you just want to make sure you're avoiding it. When the Web Mage comes out, you want to make sure you're kicking these Silken Restraints, and you want to try to keep everything towards the center of the room if you can, because a Noob Zaket, when he does his little intermission phase like this, when he has full energy, will move to the center of the room. So you want the ads there. If they're super far out, if you don't have a range kick, it makes everything very difficult. And notice my positioning here. I am aiming this frontal at the far right side of this circle, so my entire group has full room. And as you can see here, the circle, it stays attached to the boss, but it rotates around him. So you can still freely move the boss within the circle, and it will actually move the circle pretty quickly. So a tank can control... basically, you can move everything away from these tornadoes to lower the risk of your group getting hits and maximizing the space that they have to work with. The only time the Impale doesn't target the tank is I think right after the charge that he does, the burrowing charge. He'll target a random player, and then the frontal targets that player, and then it swaps back to the tank. We can try to take note of that here. Notice where Kennick is standing. He's over off to the right-hand side, and then now the next time the frontal will target me. We are going to use Ring of Peace here to not only knock the mob, but also get these little Ascension Orbs from Xal'atath under control, giving us a pretty nice haste buff. And now during this phase, we're going to be getting 2 ads instead of 1. You do want to try to kill them as fast as possible. I did commit Touch of Death to that first one, so the second one we can pump just big damage into. Our warrior just finished one of his CDs. He still has Avatar rolling. And finally, we are getting that last kind of burrowing charge before the boss phases. Now here's that the third ad of the phase, and we want to make sure we're kicking him and then rolling to the circle, and then I'm going to position, again, the frontal to the right-hand side of the circle so it doesn't clip my group. And the last thing we really want to pay attention to is these Silken Restraints. I'm going to try to get kick here. I'll be able to get kicked now. Actually, our warrior did. I'll be able to get the next kick. And again, now I'm baiting out to try to bait that frontal away, and we're going to get the kick here. Ad should be going down now, and one last time we want to bait that last Impale, again right to the right-hand side, and then Xal'atath Orbs are spawning. So it's going to be countered by a Leg Sweep. Now we have Haste Buff to finish the fight. This is a pretty intense fight for healers. Don't underestimate the damage of the infesting swarm or whatever it's called that goes on each player. If you're a DPS player or you're a healer and you get that debuff, use a personal. Watch your health. If you get low, pop a health pod. You definitely need to stay alive through it, and then when it does fall off, it does spawn one of those tornadoes, and sitting in those tornadoes applies a dot as well, so you want to be able to move pretty quickly. All right, so our next pull, we're setting focus to this Overseer. Venom Volley is the only thing we really need to watch out for in terms of kicks, and we're going to try to pick up 2 of these drones. Now, these drones make this pull a little difficult for the tank because they apply a nasty slow in the form of that dot, or not dot, I guess. I forgot what it's called. It's this like little grasping slash. Basically, it slows you by 30%, stacking up to 3 times. If that hits 3 stacks, the tank is going to be slowed by 90%, making dodging these like erupting webs very difficult to do. Now, luckily, as a Brewmaster monk, we can use Tiger's Lust to remove it. But if you're a Paladin player, or you have a Paladin in your group, they can always Freedom you. So you can see that my healer Para, he decided to actually cast Freedom on me now to remove one of those debuffs. All it does is it makes it easier to dodge. Freedom is pretty good for that, but again, Tiger's Lust is solid too. All right, so next we're going to actually tag these 2 drones, but if I pull these down to the next group, we're going to be in a world of hurt. So what I'm doing right now is I'm actually waiting for the patrol to come around so I can tag them, these carriers. They'll drop their bombs down there, and then we'll be able to kind of finish this off. Unfortunately, though, they all decided to charge Nama, and he died. Now, if you do happen to die here, the release is actually not that far away. There's a bird or a bat or whatever you want to call it that will fly you pretty much back to this location, or if it flies you to the second boss room. So getting back here is actually not too difficult to do. And again, we are watching for these grasping slashes that go on the tank, but there isn't really anything to dodge here because there's no erupting webs going off. So I'm not too worried about this pull, and then for the next pull we'll have plenty of CDs to use. Now, uniquely enough, and maybe you are starting to wonder, we are going down the left-hand side. I think this is a really good strat. Going down middle is just annoying. That giant hulking crasher, or whatever they're called in the middle, are very, very annoying to deal with. Now, this pull is really tame. Could have definitely pulled in extra drones. The only risk or the caveat of doing that is the tank's generally going to be slowed a lot more. But with things like roll and things like Tiger's Lust, it's really not that big of a deal, as well as if you have like a Paladin constantly casting Freedom on you, you're going to be healthy a lot of the time. As soon as these drones die, I think I end up chaining. I can't remember though. And then we're just making sure that we're kicking those Venom Volleys. Venom Volleys do a lot of damage, but again, it is a poison. Our group has a lot of poison dispels, so we're pretty much chilling here. Going to the next drone pack, plus being down here makes everything a little bit easier to dodge. We did get some bloods to spawn there. Now, they're the same kind of style as the boss fight, as if you can kick them, or you can CC them to remove the root from that person. So again, Freedom would be really good there, Tiger's Lust, but also just like casting Leg Sweep solid as well, though I do want to hold it for the Xal'atath Orbs. And last but not least, the Overseer goes down, and now we just have these 3 drones, which will be roughly a little over like 2% or about. So we end up being at like 100.87. So perfect on percent. We don't need to pull anything else. We should have plenty of room in the boss arena without having to pull those other Overseers. And we're going to head into the last boss with 7.5 minutes left. Lust coming up in 4. We can Lust if it eventually comes up, but chances are we'll kill the boss before that even happens. Okay, so this boss is actually, I find, the hardest at the start. And it's only because it's very difficult to get enough Bloodworkers out and available for your group to fully get rooted without dying. So here comes the first set of Dispels. We're going to pretty much spread as best we can, and once we feel like we're safe, we're dispelling ourselves. So all 4 players are doing that, and we're leaving the last one on Nama. Fury Warriors, again, very tanky. They have things like Frenzied Regen, they have D-Stance, they have Spell Reflect that are all available to them, and that's really it. Now, the thing about monks is that we could technically always transcend or transcend every other set. I'm not going to ever risk that, though. I'd rather just pull mobs in and just go run out and get rooted, like have extra blood spawn. Our healer ended up going down there because he dispelled himself and then ran into his own wave. Definitely be careful when you do that. You can get hit by your own waves if you're going fast. Luckily, we were able to get a battle res on him. Our Aug Evoker luckily had battle res. Bracers, if not, we probably would have just wiped and gone again. And again, we're just kind of playing it safe here. Now that's me, once again, vivifying our warrior just to make sure he's nice and healthy. I'm going to be rolling out this way and standing in one of these pools and getting ready for a Ring of Peace to get me, as well as, I believe that's Nama, out of the root. He probably could have done it himself with like Stormbolt and or Shock. He didn't have Shockwave. He could have done it with Stormbolt, but getting the Ring of Peace to get a double is really nice. The one last thing I do want to notice or talk about on this fight is that I'm actually running Black Ox Statue. Mostly, part of it is because Keg Smash is a little bit bugged, so having an AoE taunt is actually kind of nice. but it's very nice for these bloods. If DPS don't hit them right away, and I keep down this Ox statue somewhat in the center of the room, which you can see here if you're looking for it, it's actually going to AoE pulse taunt, like all the bloods that just spawn, and I'm able to get threat pretty easily. Which is actually pretty nice. And once again, I'm going to just roll over. I'm going to get stuck in this one, and I'm getting ready for the ring. I'm not going to grief my players. And then once that goes off, that singularity, I'm going to just instantly drop the ring of peace to get it off of us. And once again, I have the AoE statue down, and I'm then going to AoE taunt. Very easy. Always vivifying my allies if I can. This isn't really a DPS race, it's a stay alive race. So if you notice that someone's low on health, especially as a Brewmaster with that talent, throwing out Vivifies every now and again, it's like a 1 to 1.5 mil heal if you crit, which is really, really insane. If you think about it. Like you can heal people for like 25% of their health. Which feels really good. Alright, last little wave's going off there, and then we're going to be going into another singularity. I just want to make sure I'm getting far enough away. Our Paladin is right next to me. There's a couple ways for Brewmasters to get out of this. You can always Touch of Death your blood. Ring of Peace is also a great option. Lake Sweep is good too. The only problem about this week in particular is that we do have the Xal'atath orbs, and Lake Sweep is very good for those. So I don't want to throw Lake Sweep into getting out of this route when I could just Tiger's Lust. And last but not least, we have Erupting Webs. Do not get hit by these at any cost. If you can avoid them, great. If not, you're probably not doing the fight right. I accidentally got stuck in a blood there because the blood worker got too close. So I quickly Tiger's Lust myself. I'm running out. I did actually get hit by my own wave there. Definitely be careful about doing that. For tanks, it's not as big of a deal, but DPS will die because it does about 1.2 million damage. And that scales with key level. So anyways, that was a big plus 11. It wasn't crazy in terms of like world/US ranking because, again, I think this key is a little bit easier than some of its like other counterparts for the season. But overall, a very good run that I was pretty proud of. Definitely room for improvement in terms of damage and routing, but I think overall I'm actually very happy with this. And this comp was really fun to play. I'm not a big fan of H Paladin specifically with how Brewmaster takes damage, but having a 1.5 minute Evoker with a 1.5 minute Marks Hunter and Fury Warrior felt really good for cooldowns. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys learned something, and I will catch you all in the next one. Peace.